Hello everyone, a very good morning, good afternoon and good evening to all of you. This is your host Vaibhav. In today's session of correlation and regression, we will be considering the price action so far, which has been quite in favor of the US dollar. We have seen for most of the European trading session, the dollar has gained against the major currencies, and that has been the theme so far. So we will be looking into the possibilities. We will see which particular currency is the most bearish against the dollar, and if this prevailing scenario is likely to prevail or if it is likely to change. So we will be considering all these aspects moving forward so that we can figure out the best possible opportunities to take advantage of the circumstances. Now, if we consider this timeline of the price rise for the US dollar, this is the GBP USD chart drawn on the 5-minute candlestick time frame, and I have added these SMA 12 and SMA 24 to get the average price prevalent over last 1 hour and 2 hours respectively, and this Donkin channel 24 and 48 is in place to look at the price range prevailing over last 2 hours and 4 hours respectively. And in today's session I am sitting outdoor actually, just next to a water fountain, so you might get to hear some noise related to that. So pardon me, and if it gets too much, do let me know. But it's a beautiful surrounding here in a resort. I'm in a Bali resort, and it's beautiful out here. So I'm conducting this webinar sitting outside. Now coming back to the price action, the GBP has been the biggest loser of the day. If we look at its decline from the highest point to the lowest point, it has almost lost 1 percentage point from the high of 1.24 to the low of 1.2282. Now, on these lower levels, it is looking like that it is finding some support for last couple of hours. It hasn't declined much after this fast-paced decline earlier in the day. It has gone sideways for last couple of hours with this inclination still bearish. So it is still preferable to go with the flow and keep looking for short selling opportunities. Even on these lower levels, I think it is more appropriate to keep looking for short selling opportunities instead of trying to go against the flow. The GBP is not going to be the currency on which you should be waiting for the dollar to decline, at least not in today's session. The GBP is the most bearish currency so far in the session. So even if you are not really convinced of the dollar strength, we are likely to see opportunities, better opportunities elsewhere, not in the GBP. For GBP, the only thing which we can do, unless there is any significant reversal in this price action, is to keep looking for short selling opportunities. So let us now start comparing the timeline of the event, the formation of the swing high and swing low, and also the magnitude of the decline, so that we have the grip of the situation, and then we can take these things into consideration while deciding the particular instrument to trade with and which direction to take. So here we are quite convinced of the GBP's downtrend. Let's see what is the scenario for the euro. Euro has been finding some support on the lower levels closer to 1.085 level. So it is one of the least bearish currency in today's session. If we look at its timeline, the high was 1.089, just little below 1.09, and from there on it did went on to decline, and the timeline of the decline is almost identical with the timeline of the decline for the GBP. But that's where the similarity ends and the difference begins. As if we look at the magnitude of the decline, it is not substantial. It is even less than half a percentage point of the Euro USD's price value. And from there on, it has found support and it has been consolidating with showing the signs of possible reversal, and it hasn't made any new low for last 4 hours now. So GBP is the bearish, but euro is not that bearish. So that is something which we have to keep in mind. And if you are not really convinced of the dollar strength, and if you expect the rebound to happen and dollars to start depreciating against, then I think in that scenario, Euro USD is going to be the instrument of choice. And even if we consider this larger time frame charting for the euro, it has been holding above this immediate swing low formed in yesterday's session. And if we consider this price formation, it has been the formation of a consolidation with the undertone being bullish. If we look at this price charting for the Euro USD over last couple of days or even couple of weeks, the undertone has been bullish. So it is not giving up that undertone so easily in today's session also. Of course, the major trend for intraday perspective is of the dollar gains of the dollar strength. But this is something which you can keep an eye on for a possible reversal of the fortune in today's session and a possible rise for other major currencies. In that scenario, the Euro USD is going to emerge as the first choice. But before I say first, of course, I will have to consider other major currencies also like AUD, NZD, CHF, CAD, CAD, and JPY for that matter before we can figure out who is the most bullish or bearish for today's spectrum. So let's see the development for AUD. AUD is a lot more bearish than the euro, but less bearish so compared to the GBP. If we look at the high and the low, the difference is little less than 1 percentage point, but more than half a percentage point, and it has not really shown that much tendency as we saw in case of euro to rise from these lower levels. It is now not far off from these prior swing low, and it looks likely that it is going to dip further on the lower side, but it is falling in between the spectrum of the bearishness. It is not the leading currency. GBP is the leading one and the euro is the lagging one. So you will have to place the AUD somewhere in the middle of these two major currencies. And in that scenario, it is better to omit the AUD from the trading possibilities and go with the strongest of the currency on either side. Let's consider its Asia Pacific peer of NZD. The chart is taking some time to load. I think I will have to complain to the revert people. Alright, we got it back. Now, if we consider the NZD's analysis, it is more bearish compared to the AUD, but less bearish compared to the GBP. And this high to low difference is of little less than 1 percentage point. And but we have to look at this immediate swing low which has been formed just an hour back, which is in line with the low formed for the GBP, and AUD and euro haven't really formed a fresh swing low. So that is something which is going to put the NZD ahead of these AUD and the euro in terms of its bearishness against the dollar in today's session, but that is also going to put it behind the GBP. So if we consider this price formation here, for the GBP, things are the most bearish one, and for euro, things are mildly bearish. It is not bullish. Please keep that in mind. I'm not saying the euro is bullish for the day. It is the least bearish, and the GBP is the most bearish. So that is the analysis of this timeline of the swing high and swing low is telling us. Now we will have to invert the scale as USD becomes the first currency and CAD becomes the base currency. Alright, we got the chart for the USD CAD, and CAD is also declining against the dollar, but apparently it is not that much bearish. Earlier in the day, actually, it was appreciating against the dollar, then it gave up that gains and started to decline, but I think it is not at the USD CAD is not really at the highest point of the day. Let me see the hourly chart so that we can make a better assessment of its medium term perspective. Yeah, it is approaching this high of the Asian trading session. So CAD is also one of the bearish currency against the dollar. And if we look at its charting and timeline, it seems that it is now gaining a fresh bearish impetus with the USD CAD rising to the highest point of the day after being near around this prior low. So it seems like a reversal of fortune for the USD CAD, and it is trying to catch up with its other bearish peers. It seems if we have to look at the charting for the Euro USD, it is less bearish so, but for the CAD, things are apparently more bearish, and we will have to place it ahead of the even NZD and AUD as even though the magnitude of this rise is not really that much, but given this timeline, it seems the fresh impetus is there, and that is going to give us more ammunition for the traders who feel that the CAD is also likely to catch up with its other bearish peers, and in that scenario, the CAD is likely to depreciate further, giving us the possibility of USD CAD climbing past 1.34 in coming hours. So if we have to go for that kind of scenario, we will have to keep looking for the opportunities to buy it. And I think here we can adopt a buy on dip strategy as long as it is not really dipping below this immediate swing low of 1.335. So that is something that can be kept in mind. Now let's consider USD CHF, and afterwards we will taking a look on the developments for the USD JPY. CHF has also been one of the bearish currency in today's session. In afternoon, I was also looking for a trade in the CHF, but I also then settled for the GBP for a short selling opportunity, considering GBP to be more bearish. But of late, the CHF seems to have taken the mantle. Its immediate swing high is quite substantially higher compared to the prior swing high, and that is going to put it even ahead of the GBP in immediate terms. The GBP seems to be stalling on the lower levels, but not so the CHF. If we look at the magnitude of this prior swing low and this newer swing low difference, it is not really much, but for USD CHF the difference is quite substantial. So in terms of the magnitude, this difference is going to put it in front of the GBP. So we have to consider this difference, and in that scenario, the CHF is apparently more bearish in comparison to the GBP. And if we have to go for the opportunities here, we will have to, I think, give first preference to this and keep looking for a buy on dips opportunity in coming hours. Before we can get this all major currencies ranked in terms of their relative strength and weakness against the US dollar, we have this USD JPY to be considered. And if we look at the price formation for the Asian and the European trading session, earlier it was in a declining phase, but after 10 GMT it seems to have reversed course, and now it is also catching up with its more bearish peer with this substantial rise being seen in last couple of hours after this long consolidation phase. But still, we have to put it somewhere in the middle. It is not exactly bearish. I think we have to give the first preference to the CHF for a new trade to be taken in next couple of hours, and it is then going to be followed by GBP. CAD is also there, but CAD is not going to be a first choice. So CHF is the best place currency for a more bearish scenario. And then if we are looking for a possible reversal, then I think the euro can be considered, but it is not bullish for today's session, so we will have to keep a watch on it. And whenever further confirmation comes in of it not really dipping much on the lower side, in that kind of scenario, I think we will be in a better position to exploit the possible change. But right now, the momentum is with the dollar, so in keeping up with our earlier assessment, the CHF is the best choice, and as I said, the GBP comes after it, while the euro has to be kept on the opposite side of the spectrum. Now let's consider the equity. We will be considering the three equity indices of the US. As the US session is going to start very soon in 10 minutes time, if we look at the futures of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, it has continued to decline throughout the European trading session with the magnitude of around half a percentage point. More than half a percentage point decline is there for the futures of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And if we take a look on the S&P 500, it is taking some time. All right, we got it. For the S&P 500, the magnitude is almost similar, but of late it is showing a sharp decline of around quarter percentage point. Let me compare it with this Dow Jones Industrial Average charting. It is less so for the Dow Jones. Let's consider Nasdaq. Nasdaq has been more of a bullish equity index for last couple of sessions, even though the major trend has been bearish. But we have seen the Dow to be the most bearish one and Nasdaq to be the least bearish one. And today, as the flow seems to be against these Nasdaq's undertone, here we will have to go with the flow, but let's consider its medium term perspective first. It seems to be in a correction phase. In yesterday's session, we saw a substantial rise of around 3 percentage points, and from those gains, some correction is being seen. But we can't really say that the Nasdaq is overtly bearish. I think for any bearish trade, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is going to be a better choice. But for any continuation momentum, the Nasdaq is going to be the best place from the medium term perspective, as long as it doesn't really go on to deep below these immediate swing low. So if it consolidates for next couple of hours, if it finds support and holds above the 11,700, then I think even in today's session we can go for a buy trade in Nasdaq. So buy on dip strategy is going to be the best choice for the Nasdaq, but not so much for the Dow. The Dow has been the weakest of these three equity indices for last couple of sessions, and that seems to be the case today in today's session also. Even though the magnitude of decline is almost identical for these all the three equity indices, but given the undertone for last couple of days and from medium term time frame, I would prefer to have the outlook slightly bullish for the Nasdaq, but not so for the Dow Jones Industrial Average. So here, for going with the flow, we have the Dow Jones Industrial Average as the first choice. But if you expect the things to reverse later in the day, and if you get some signs of a possible reversal with a fresh swing high being formed after the start of the North American trading session, maybe in coming hours, then we can give more weightage to the Nasdaq and decide to go for opportunities to buy on dips. So that is my assessment, looking at the current price action prevalent for these equity futures for the US equity indices. Before we wrap up the session, let's consider the European equity indices of DAX, the Germany's leading equity index, and the FTSE 100. for the UK. The DAX has also been declining, and its decline is almost 1 percentage point from the highest point to the lowest point, and it is seems to be consolidating on the lower side, but the undertone for the DAX is also bearish for the day. Let's consider the FTSE 100. It is not strongly bullish either. It has been declining earlier and then it was retracing on the higher side. So I would suggest to avoid it as of now, as there is not much time left in the European equity session and we are likely to have fresh opportunities in the US equity indices. Let's consider FTSE 100 as well. FTSE 100 is taking time. Let me change the candle period to 5 minutes and see if it loads faster or no. Alright, 70% there. Oh, again back to 0%. I don't know what's happening. Alright, back to 73%. Let's hope that it becomes 100% in a couple of seconds, as I don't want much time to. Alright, we got it. So here, if we look at this charting for the FTSE 100, it declined quite fast after the 10 GMT. I think it was caused by economic release. I'm not really sure. I was not really aware if there was any data release for the UK, but that seems to be the cause, or whatever it might be. There was substantial selling, and then it went sideways for last almost 6 hours now. So whatever action was to happen happened earlier, and then it is not really going anywhere. And I would not really suggest any kind of buy trade in the FTSE 100. Instead, it is looking like the most bearish one of all the equity indices which we have seen so far in the session. So the first preference for any buy opportunity remains with the Nasdaq, and the opportunity to sell is likely to come our way in Dow Jones Industrial Average. Even the FTSE 100 can be kept on the watch list for possible move on the lower side. So that's my assessment looking at the current price scenario for these equity indices. So if you have any query or any idea to share, do write to me in the feedback and I would be more than happy to take the discussion forward. So thank you all for joining in. Have a fabulous day ahead, a profitable day ahead. See you next time around with the fresh assessment of the price scenario prevalent in tomorrow's session. So see you tomorrow.